All right, why don't we get started today? Welcome everybody to the Department of Forestry's Hanover seminar series. My name is David Skoll. I'm a professor in the department, and it is my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Runsheng. Runsheng has been with the department since 2000. He came to by way of a PhD program at the University of Georgia. And I've worked with Runsheng for many years as a colleague in the department. He's an expert, really a well-known, internationally well-known expert on ecosystem services, including some really new stuff on how you do the valuation of ecosystem services, which I'm working with him on some projects in Asia on. He's come today to talk to us about his some work that he's done in China. He's an international expert on environmental progress, environmental restoration in China. And today he's going to make a presentation on China's long march in restoring degraded terrestrial ecosystems in China. So without further ado, Runsheng, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Dave. Thanks everyone for coming. I'm delighted to report what I have been doing lately, if not over the last 10 to 15 years. Perhaps as many of you know, ever since the turn of the century, China has initiated and implemented a number of large ecological restoration programs, including the through-pillar conversion program, whereby farmers are subsidized by the government to retire and restore degraded cropland. The natural forest protection program, whereby the state forestry enterprises are mandated to phase out their commercial logging first, and then completely ban logging from natural forests. Now that's a nationwide policy. Meanwhile, a lot of the employees were laid over, were transferred into forest protection management and even into other related sectors of business. And also we had the desertification combating program, mostly around Beijing, the northern place, whereby the herders, ranchers, are subsidized to reduce grazing and also to put their livestock production in confinement instead of allowing them running around. Meanwhile, there have been some institutional and governance changes, including forest tenure reforms in the collective forest region and state forest enterprise and forest farms reforms. Without a map, it would be hard to connect all the dots, but hold on for a minute, I will get to there quickly. Certainly, these programs and policies have presented quite some essential as well as exciting research opportunities, including investigating the driving forces of change as well as assessing the consequences or impacts of the change. And here's the framework my team has adopted. That is coupled natural and human processes research framework, whereby various land use, land cover changes, or ecosystem condition changes are investigated in an integrated manner so that the ecological impacts as well as the socio-economic impacts can be carefully evaluated. And of course, over the years, we have organized events, produced books, journal special issues, so forth. And also, from a quite energetic young man, now this is who I am. I'm quite an old guy and close to my retirement program.
Still an energetic.
Oh, still energetic, try. Thanks. And here's the studies that we have been working on. And for your information, and in China, forest resources are mostly distributed in the southeast half of the country. In terms of natural forests, they are mostly in the upper northeast or the southwest highlands. When we talk about natural forest protection, we are mostly talking about forest protection activities here and there. And here's the southern collective forest region. So when we talk about tenure reform, we are mostly referring to what's been going on institutionally in the southern region. In the northern place, a lot of farming forestry activities have come of age, and even some foresters have claimed, oh, this is another emerging forest region. The fact of the matter is, this is a heavy farm region, a major national food basket. But with conducive policy and environmental conditions, forestry indeed has become very important, particularly various agroforestry systems. So when we talk about sloping land conversion, this is primarily the area. And when we talk about natural forest protection, we are talking about, in my case, mostly there, desertification combating, that is the primary regional concentration. All right? I hope with that things are a little bit clear. Let's look at the forest condition change induced by the Natural Forest Protection Program in the Northeast, Heilongjiang Province specifically. And as I said, the program was initiated around the turn of the century. Should we have stick to that kind of knowledge and starting our research from year 2000? And here you can see little can be detected. Really, because of my knowledge of the earlier forestry history, we decided to trace back as early as the late 70s using NASA Landsat images. Guess what? Now a more complete and compelling picture has emerged. If you look at the deforestation, which mostly occurred prior to 2000, okay? Partly induced by the tremendous expansion of agricultural activities, and also by commercial and residential construction activities there. Meanwhile, wetland here, other land use primarily covers wetland in Heilongjiang. So that has also suffered historically. Cool. This is a nice story. Just this graph can get a tiny paper published. Okay? However, that is only part of the story. The other big part is to take advantage of this type of information and then couple with other socio-economic and biophysical observations to conduct some kind of driving force analysis. Okay? Particularly try to capture the interrelationships between forest land, farmland, and wetland. Okay? And earlier we already explored similar issues, albeit in a different part of the country, and so learned quite some lessons. So more recently, we took advantage of the data we generated and developed this three-stage least square regression modeling system, which integrates farmland, forestland, and wetland into a three-equation system. Okay. What can we tell? Well, indeed, forestland has suffered from farmland expansion, and also wetland is a substitution, has a substitutional relationship with forest land. In addition, we see natural forest protection program has indeed played a positive role in holding the continued decline of forest cover. Even though the forest cover has not turned around yet by the end of our analysis, that is around 2015. And if we look at other socioeconomic factors, we see population, industrial activities, farming related activities have all played some roles in different land use and land cover change dynamics. Okay? I hope that's clear enough. And for now, if you have questions, certainly we can come back later to discuss. And another step, spin off the geospatial information we generated from for land use, land cover change study is to look into, like David said, the ecosystem condition and ecosystem service changes. Okay? See if land use, land covers have improved over time, induced by implementing the sloping cropland conversion programs with the reduction of farmland, the gains in grassland and forestland. Now, what do we expect? We would expect partially the erosion condition should be mitigated. Well, this is indeed what we have found, but barely so. Why? Earlier, we couldn't have a longer time series. We could only went up to 2006, 2007 earlier. Other than some anomaly time, we see the erosion indeed has subsided over time. But that is not so satisfying. Let's look at a more recent study into the regional level. In this case, a Chinese doctoral student has an uncle working with the Yellow River Commission. She was able to walk into their archive and dig up all the hydrological field observation records for 40 plus stations across this whole region, covering 0.7 million hectares. My gosh, that's fantastic. With that kind of data, and plus our knowledge of implementing the restoration programs there, let's do a quick plot. This is what we realized. In some major observational stations, we see by the turn of the century, indeed we see either sediment discharge or sediment concentration has declined, even though there was some fluctuation over time, but overall trending downward. Certainly that is not a coincidence. And we know that the government was initiating some heavy restoration activities in the region. Okay, so let's couple all the pieces of knowledge and see what we can do in this case. Again, we developed a 3-equation system to number one, explore the linkages between water runoff, sediment concentration, and sediment discharge. Furthermore, we are going to try to incorporate various social ecological factors into the analysis. Okay, first, in this scenario, only natural factors, nothing about the policy or socio-economic drivers. And then the next step is to incorporate all the relevant socio-ecological information plus the policy programs, okay? And the model got benefit, and guess what? Here we see, among other things, implementing the sloping land conversion programs indeed has significantly reduced what? Reduced sediment concentration. That's what we expected. And meanwhile, terracing has been practiced for long, and that has, in some cases, localized the runoff and also mitigated sediment discharge. Okay, sounds good. If we look at other factors, everything is basically consistent with what we had expected. Interesting, and certainly at a large regional scale to be able to conduct this kind of qualitative or econometric assessment, certainly I would say a lot of the government officials and scholars are very pleased to hear this story. That's about the ecosystem or ecological side of the story. Now let's switch over to socio-economic side. So, as an economist, certainly I need to pay my due on the socio-economic impacts as well. But before we go, just look at this picture visually. You can see the heavy degradation, of course, also the very tiny and fragmented land pieces or plots. And that is very important, crucial in terms of policy design and implementation effectively when we come back later. And so our sample observations come from a large number of households in Shanxi and Sichuan provinces, mostly the west part of the country. And the data set covers now up till when? 2015? John? Yes. But with this study was published earlier, we only have data coverage up to 2008. Here is, for your quick information, the enrollment situation. Okay, in terms of the percentage of households enrolled in the program, we see in Shanxi it went up to almost 100%, whereas in Sichuan leveled off at roughly 60% of the households. In terms of area enrolled, interesting, okay? If we look at the situation in Shanxi, per family had roughly 15 mu, that is 1 hectare enrolled in the program. And there, farmers had more degraded cropland. So even in that case, one family could only have roughly 1 hectare, whereas in Sichuan, it's less than 1/3 of a hectare per family. Oh, that is so dramatically different from the situation here in the US. In this country, every farmer has a single contract over 30 hectares. That's much larger. And of course, it's contiguous. And therefore, much more easier to adopt some market-based bidding mechanisms. Whereas in China, think about it, you are dealing with this kind of landscape with hundreds of thousands of households. Not easy. And take a closer look yourself first. These are some very unique graphs. First, about the structural changes in their land use. See, because of implementing the sloping cropland conversion programs, farmland understandably declined over time, quite significant. Meanwhile, the so-called forest land, not officially defined forest land, but land has been retired, planted to trees, the forest cover was established, has gone up quite dramatically. And I always tell folks when I introduce these graphs, this type of phenomenon you can see nowhere else, only in China, only in the last decade. And so that's the land use structural shift. Let's look at the labor use structural change. And we can see over time, more and more labor time is used for non-farming activities. Farmers migrated out to find jobs in local towns, in big cities far away, to do all kinds of construction, transportation, and other services jobs. Farming, even in the deep west, is a minor thing now. So this is their overall farming time in Sichuan and Shanxi. So we can clearly see by the end of the first round of the government program, farming activity became predominant. Okay. Here are two more graphs, very interesting. First, if we look at the actual revenues from farming and compare that to the government subsidies, what we realize is, in most of the years, the government has over-subsidized the farmers in their land retirement and restoration. In this graph, what we can see is why farmers all flooded into cities, nearby towns to seek other job opportunities. They can make more money. The wage rates from off-farm activities are generally higher than on-farm activities. Oh, indeed. This is very important because if some folks familiar with this debate, earlier quite some scholars, especially some ecologists, raised the concern that, look, once the subsidy is stopped, the farmers are going to reconvert their retired land back to farming. Has that happened? Never. Furthermore, this suggests farmers would, even without the subsidy, venture out to find off-farm jobs. That has indeed been what has happened. In many places, without the subsidy, I'm going to give it up. No more farming. Take my family to the county headquarters so that kids can go to schools, and then I will find some job somewhere, construction, transportation, whatever about. And then I will help my wife to do some work as well. Gradually, temporary living becomes permanent. And then their life condition improved. We have some money. Honey, shall we buy a home here? Oh yeah, there are some commercial apartments available. So let's purchase where you live. So now in many places, including my hometown, most population has completely gone. Okay? So this is some follow-up opportunities we are currently studying and quite interesting. All right, let's look at the income structure a little bit and see what's the situation. Maybe this is too much traffic, too much numbers, too many numbers. So let's, for your convenience, just look at the following two columns. What you can see, okay? Agriculture accounted for more than 60% of local farmers' income in Shaanxi back in 1999, whereas that proportion came down to less than 30% by 2008. In Sichuan, likewise, we see that farming has gone down to 43%. Okay. In contrast, off-farm work is close to a half and close to a half. Tremendous, deep structural, socio-economic structural change. So I always joke with folks. The good news is if you study Chinese province, you do not have to wait for 30 years or 50 years to generate sufficient changes on the ground so that your study can be meaningful. In this case, 10 years would be long enough. All right, a little bit about income inequality. Well, of course, when we conduct socio-economic analysis, we need to take into account not only effectiveness and efficiency, but also equality. And we normally use the Gini coefficient to measure income distribution inequality. And the Gini coefficient is very simple. Just a ratio of A over A plus B. See, if income is evenly distributed, it should go along this diagonal. So A is 0. Gini coefficient is 0. If income is not evenly distributed, a lot of people, lower income people, would take up only a small percentage of total income, whereas the last 1%, 5% of high income earners would command the lion's shares of the total pie. Okay? So income Gini coefficient normally should be around 0.3. If it's over at about 0.4, the distributional situation is really, really bad. Okay? And here we see, yes, the Gini coefficient went up to close to 0.4%, but that has little to do with implementing the sloping land commercial programs. However, it has much to do with what? With people's off-farm income employment opportunities. In other words, off-farm job opportunities and income earnings have made the large difference in terms of increased income inequality. Okay? So, yeah, we will talk about econometric analysis of the program impact. Here we can look at the impact from different perspectives. And first we can look at the impact on land-based income. Okay? So here's the household level participation. Participation, people used to have a dummy variable, yes or no. Yes, participate. No, not participate. Well, that's not ideal, or that's not preferable. What's preferable is the extent of participation. How many mows or how many hectares have you or your family enrolled into the program? Whether or not there has been some change over time. Okay? Here we see that participation per se is not a self-selection decision. That is, because of the program was implemented in such a rapid top-down fashion, farmers couldn't respond intentionally in terms of their decision whether or not they participate, and if they do, what scale. So in econometrics term, that means no endogeneity. That's good. So the original estimation of the program impact should remain valid. That is, the program has positively affected land-based income. Okay, no matter you use regular OLS regression or with instrumental variables. All right. Next, again, off-farm work and off-farm income. Of course, particularly some forest policymakers have made the claim, look, implementing the program has generated more off-farm job opportunities, therefore improved their off-farm income. Whether or not that's true? Well, it turns out, yes, household participation has positively affected off-farm work time, meaning driven by their participation, they were able to have more off-farm job opportunities and work time. However, what we discovered is that the off-farm income, not necessarily true, meaning participation has not increased their off-farm income, even though their work time has in general increased. That's a little bit puzzling. But once you get deeper into the messy picture, you realize, geez, why it can be so? Because the job opportunities are so variable. Some, construction work makes good money, whereas other service job, to be a nanny or to be a waitress or to do massage, cannot help you much. So therefore, in terms of off-farm income, with the large proportion of the total income being off-farm income, understandably, the marginal impact is not that significant. All right, just a little bit econometrics, not too much, all right? Otherwise, it's a little bit unbearable. See, our field observations and some formal analysis suggest we need to somehow get back to policy design and implementation. Earlier, if you recall, a lot of people have made the claim that this is the top-down uniform subsidies which may not be effective. And later on, as we got into the game, we realized, oh, this is really complicated. Why? Because the large programs tend to feature social ecological variation over time and space, number one. Number two, there are multiple ecosystem services targeted by the government. Unlike some watershed protection for clean quality water or small scale programs. And furthermore, poverty reduction and livelihood improvement are included as a part of the overall goal of the program. And when we come to forestry activities, how to tie payments to the ecosystem services to be delivered down the road in the far future. So, meaning the conditionality is either low or very weak. Then the question is, how are we going to address those issues? Internationally, a lot of talking of the experience of Costa Rica and Mexico, so on and so forth, plus some private sector bottled water enterprises or other related single service situations, which may not apply to this, or similar at least to this kind of situation. So, market-based solutions. You are an economist. Let's adopt market-based solutions. Tell me how to do it. Not many people have thought very systematic. And also, if the land tracts, the plots are too tiny, too fragmented, the question is how to get local people organized to participate collectively. Well, for that matter, we need to look at a particular watershed. This is one from Wuchi County in the Los Plateau region. We can see, indeed, from the satellite imagery, very rock and rough terrains, but when we interpreted the satellite images, finally figured out all the details of this particular watershed of 543 plus hectares. Now we realized, geez, this is really interesting game. And see, altogether there are almost 500 pieces. The smallest one is only 0.01 hectare. The largest 27.2 hectares. On average, only a bit over 1 hectare per piece of the land. Wow. Furthermore, the slope steepness is very variable, from a few degrees up to close to 40 degrees. Yes. So, the bottom line is, given this kind of landscape features, characteristics, how we are going to implement market-based PES? Okay, here we are. The fundamental issue is the mismatch between small land plants and ecosystem services provision. It's the landscape level, okay? Clearly, we see plant level targeting. Targeting those tiny individual plants doesn't work. Well, that means we need to scale up to some kind of landscape. Okay, scale up to the landscape level. How to do that is first what we need to know, and also that entails the need for planning and organization. Some folks were not so happy with the government top-down approach. Immediately jump to the concern, oh, are you talking about twisting the individual's arm to allow them to join the program no matter what? I said, not necessarily so. And actually, this summer we had some debate at a couple of conferences and workshops in Beijing. And even with the top government policymakers, this is still not clear yet, let alone being adopted. So I made the point, well, if the majority of the local community decided to participate, then internally, the few people who decided not to participate can be arranged for a certain kind of differentiated payment, or if this area is under coverage and someone who's not willing to participate has a small plant there, that can make a swap with other people who decided to participate in this area anyway, so that that person can find another piece of the land for the unwilling person somewhere else. So local level solutions are indeed available. And so furthermore, we realized in the Chinese context, the communities collectively or some entrepreneurs can step in to be the so-called aggregators, like what we discussed in forest carbon storage situations. Okay, for the government, the primary responsibility should be generate and provide enough information. Furthermore, if we are going to adopt some kind of market-based solution to ask communities collectively bid for restoration contracts, then an environmental benefit index is very crucial, very necessary, and we need to think about how to put together such an index. So far, again, in China, that is still a very big concept. So actually, it was funny, they even decided to form a so-called market-based solution community and asked whether or not I can be on the committee as well. So a lot will come soon, I would say, over the next a few years. Finally, before I stop, just to mention a little bit of my involvement in studying forestry reform, as I mentioned earlier, in China. But in order to better prepare myself, I spent my sabbatical roughly 8 years ago at Indiana University, visiting Professor Eleanor Ostrom and his colleague Dan Clay from the law school. And I learned quite a bit. And then recharged myself and got fired up with some coming tenure reform issues and made some noise in the international literature. And furthermore, that kind of endeavor has prepared myself to take up later a project for the US ARD by examining the empirical linkages between devolved tenure systems in different parts of the world and forest conditions. And USARD even put out a 4-pager to be circulated right before the 2015 UN Climate Change Special Summit. And later on, when the papers are published in Forest Policy and Economics, I got a spotlight by UFRO to highlight what we did, seeing evidence linking community forest rights and improved forest condition inconclusive. Yes, indeed, not conclusive. A lot of work remains to be done. To close, first, we see indeed in China, the ecological restoration has accomplished quite a great deal, and a lot of the degraded ecosystems now got restored. Forest vegetation cover overall has expanded up close to 23%. And we also discovered improvements in the ecosystem functionality and services. Of course, there are challenges, okay? Number one, how to improve the resource conditions. Greening up is the first step. Then, how to improve spacings of the trees, the growth of the forest stands, and the structure, diversity, so forth. A lot remains to be done. And also, the policy needs to be further improved in terms of longer-term implementation and improve the effectiveness as well. Academically speaking, yes, indeed, exciting opportunities of impact evaluation, forest governance, and land change science. However, what I have been trying to do is to generate geospatial and other field observations, and then have some coupled integrated analysis so that we can better identify the policy impacts. And also, now I look back, and particularly given the international community is so much into the 2030 sustainability agenda and the related 17 sustainable development goals, and we need to frame issues from the broader perspectives. That's it. Thank you very much for your patience.
Okay, we have 10 minutes for questions. Runsheng, if you want to take those.
Sure.
Runsheng, I know you studied at the University of Georgia. I mean, it's always a fascinating piece of American history where all the failed cotton plantations in the South were converted into forest land. And that wasn't from a top-down policy. It was more or less the market forces. But it's amazing to see how forested the southeastern United States is and how important a place that used to be completely dominated by agriculture is dominated by the forest products industry.
Yeah.
So even though a very different force is creating a pattern like this, it seems, in China, do you see that forestry is going to be a more important part of the economy in the future?
Yes.
In this region?
Exactly. That's a very good observation. My concern is the Chinese stakeholders have almost virtually forgotten the significant roles of the industry place. And so far in the policy reform arena and in implementing the restoration program, even in the natural forest systems, where used to be so many state-owned forest enterprises, now completely gone. They just say, we are going to let the forests recover over the next 20 years. See what happens? I think, oh, that's just nuts. Such a big chunk of land, you can do a good job in terms of improve the resource conditions while produce timber, improve the forest structure at the same time. But the government takes a completely opposite approach. No more commercial activities, completely focusing on restoration, rehabilitation. And I see that's a problem. Yet, of course, in the longer term, the industrial will come back and play a major role. And for now, as I indicated, the industry has been flourishing in the northern farmplace where no government regulation. I can cut as much as I want. I can cut wherever I want. See, in other places, heavy regulation, difficult to do business.
Is China a net importer of wood then, or?
Not only the net import of wood, it's coming as the number one wood products importer. Meaning, U.S. is falling behind. The annual total consumption is close to 700 million cubic meters of raw wood equivalent, whereas domestically everything is included. Perhaps only 400.
So those findings you had in China, how much of those can be transportable to different countries like India or African nations with different cultural background or political system? I'm asking how robust your finding is based in economics.
Yes, very good question. And as I alluded to, China is a big country. And for some small places like Nepal or like Costa Rica, China's experience may not apply so well, and vice versa. However, China's experience should be relevant to India, to Africa continent, and also other countries like Mexico and even Brazil, I would say. And particularly, it appears, maintaining the continuity of policy and really focus on the big picture can make a huge difference. Yes, market-based solution is crucial, but even we couldn't figure out right away, so long as the government has continuous subsidies, clear policy mandates, we are going to restore and recover the ecosystems no matter what. We can see in 20 years, in 30 years, gradually. Now, particularly in this part of China, consensus, even with NASA data, it has been shown the green cover has moved northward by 500 to 600 kilometers. Major changes. Yeah. That's, and I think you have it.
I have noticed that the land labor allocation picture, and it said that the cropland experienced a dramatic decline and the forest land decreased. Increased. And I have a question about that is, as we know, China has experienced a rapid urbanization, so there has many migrant workers to urban or off-farm work.
Yeah.
So how can we identify the impact of the ecosystem service to increase the forest land, or it is influenced by the urbanization, or sterilization. So how can we identify the policy effect?
Oh, that's again a very good question. And as I did it's the beginning of early part of my talk. See, if we can have field observations and then look at the erosion condition changes or other forest ecosystem services like biodiversity or carbon storage, we can easily quantify, and particularly in conjunction with data generated from satellite images, so on and so forth. But of course, I have to say, geez, doing research on regional scale is very expensive, and I personally can't do almost anything myself. But the good news is, in many cases, for instance, for the social economic studies, I have been working with colleagues primarily from the National Forest Policy Research Center of the State Forestry Administration. So every year they spend millions of yuan to collect data, visited households across different parts of the country. I can provide some advice and then waiting for the data available to me or my student to do some follow-up work. For the hydrological or soil erosion studies, normally we could have data even for some top scientists in the Academy of Sciences. They can only afford data from a few stations, not a large number of them, very expensive. But the good news in this case is the lady has an uncle with the Yellow River Commission who could simply hand it over to the student, go ahead and get whatever you want without any payment. So the lady generated data for 40-some stations over a period of 16 years. Imagine how costly that could be. But now, without any money, we could develop the data set. And this is only some initial analysis. We plan to follow up with some kind of cost-benefit analysis and also a more precise account. How much of the reduced erosion can be attributed in your turn to the government programs, and how effective the program has been based on what we have determined. Thank you. Yes. Sit down, please.
Maybe I can stand up so everybody can get me well.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm from the province, a landlocked province, just next to the Shanxi you just mentioned.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so the situation in my province is very, how to say, crucial. Crucial. It's not so good as other provinces because there are so many deserts.
Very severe.
The desertification, yeah, you can see the dry and on the top, not top.
Yes, this is part of your home.
Yeah, right on
Gansu.
top of it is
Yes.
our province, yeah. All the policy you have mentioned just now, especially for our province, there is a great project of swapping land,
Yes, land.
conversion from farmland to forest land. Yeah, now it has been into the third
Yes.
round policy implementation. Yeah, I think that's very obvious. If you give householders so much payment and they calculate it for their opportunity cost, they find it is equal for what they have lost from the farm contract, so they can accept it very easily. But for our project, especially our restoration program, I don't think many householders can accept the compensation very well.
Mhm.
Even some of them, most of them, we have some investigation in the rural area. Most of them, even they don't know some compensation from the natural, from other restoration programs.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the reasons is just Ms. Wu has mentioned labor mobility
Mm.
from the rural area to the urban. And I think other reasons maybe we can think about it. If the household we investigate, is he right to be our objective to give him a survey to investigate? Because in the household, rural household, there are many members in the family. I think many young members can have their more rational decision.
Mhm.
Yeah, maybe if we ask some of them, the younger adults from the rural family, we can find some rational results
Mhm.
or rational suggestion for how much they can accept from the compensation restoration program.
Right.
So I just want to ask you a question.
Oh, please.
The payment for the ecosystem
Mhm. Services.
services, yeah, sorry. Are there many advanced methods or theory for supporting the payment evaluation? And is there any method can be well applied in practice? Thank you.
Sure, yes, and we can talk later in detail, but to be brief, yes, I think your idea is good based on your local experience. We can certainly have some more nuanced analysis into the different attitudes, some older folks, some younger folks, versus some better educated versus less educated people, and see how the policy can be designed more effectively. But all of a sudden, if you track the numbers I have presented, so many people have already moved out. They have decided not to come back, and in many cases they were fortunate to receive the government subsidies. And as I said, in some cases, even without the subsidy, we saw this in northern part of the Shaanxi. A lot of people decided to move on. Why? When we talk to them, kids' education is a primary concern. Now in many villages, no school, period. Even elementary school, not there anymore. For elementary school, the kids have to go to boarding school into the, township headquarters or even the county headquarters. If you want your kids to have a bright future, what can you do other than moving on? That has been a major driver, compared to the economic motivation. Normally we don't capture that in our service, but that's very important. We can talk more later. Okay, thanks.
Okay, I think our time is up.
Yes.
Thank you, Runsheng, for a great presentation.
Thanks.
And just remind everybody to stay tuned.